name's Steve Gagner. I am a entrepreneur and a veteran of the United States Army. I served in the Army for almost 28 years, from 1996 until the end of 2023. I retired as a lieutenant colonel in the infantry. And in 2011, my friend Matt and I founded 14 Star Brewing Company, which is a craft brewery in northern Vermont. Unlike most veteran entrepreneurs who leave the service and then start a business, I actually started the brewery with Matt before we retired from the service. So we both retired within about a year of each other, but that was in 2022 and 2023, respectively. But we started the brewery a little more than a decade before that. So we were very fortunate in that we were both moved into the AGR system. So we were active duty assigned to the Guard at the end of our careers, which was wonderful. And it allowed us to put down some roots and start a business before most of our active duty contemporaries could. But we started the brewery with the idea that we wanted it to be something that we could do post-retirement. So the major things that we took from our military service into our business lives were certainly the personal discipline. When you're starting a business and you're responsible for everything, there's a lot of stuff to do. And especially when you're still working while you're doing it, we were still in the service. But when you're still working, a lot of those entrepreneurial pursuits need to happen before work hours or after work hours. And so oftentimes I would wake up about 4 a.m, get a couple hours of work done. And in the morning time, that mostly consisted of planning, paying bills, checking the financial situation. And then in the evenings, we would check on the beer, make sure that everything was progressing the way it needed to. And then on the weekends, we were focused on brewing and selling of the beer. So we certainly took a lot of personal discipline away, not being afraid of hard work. But then as we started to build the team and hire employees, we really leaned on our time in the service in personnel management and really teaching, coaching, developing, and mentoring our new employees and developing them into being the kind of employees that they had the potential to be. And that really paid dividends for the business. So brewing is an interesting industry in that you not only have to have all of the business stuff down, but in brewing, there are a bunch of additional licensing requirements. So before we even get into how to become a good brewer, you need to be able to obtain a brewer's permit. And you can find that at the TTB website. I think it's ttb.gov, the Taxes and Trade Bureau. And they're the licensing body for breweries. In addition, per state, each state has its own requirements for licensing and operating a craft brewery, which will include the taxes that you pay, how to keep your records, etc. So before getting into craft brewing, I would understand what your state and then the federal requirements are just to obtain a permit. That will allow you to brew beer commercially. You can't sell alcohol until you have one of these permits. It's a bad idea. I wouldn't recommend it. But in terms of brewing as a profession, there are a lot of great resources that exist now that didn't exist or weren't as good more than a decade ago. So there are lots of YouTube videos about how to create and how to brew really good beer, and I would start there. If you're looking for a formal education, Steve Parks at the American Brewers Guild runs both, I believe it's a distance learning, and he also has an in-house brewing school that he runs right here in Vermont, in Middlebury. Fantastic brewer, fantastic people, fantastic instruction. And as we were coming into the Vermont brewing scene, Steve and his crew were instrumental in helping us through some of the technical things that we didn't understand as it related to commercial brewing. So I would recommend either finding a course like his, and certainly in addition to having some sort of training, even if it's self-taught, finding mentors who are in the industry, who are the kinds of brewers that you want to become, and who aren't afraid to give you very critical feedback. Because when you're a home brewer, everyone thinks that your beer is great, and they will tell you that your beer is great. But once they're paying for it, you will get the full weight of their honesty in terms of Yelp reviews, business reviews, on Beer Advocate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So find some education, find the resources that are free online, and then find a mentor who will be open and honest with you about the quality and the quality of your beer and the technique that you're bringing to bear. So once you made the decision to move into commercial brewing from being a home brewer, you'll need to start thinking about the kinds of the type and amount of equipment that you'll need. One of the really interesting things about brewing is that commercial brewing is not dissimilar from home brewing. You are just making it in much bigger batches. Our first commercial brewery was actually a 31-gallon brew house. And so essentially we can make 2 big kegs of beer at a time. And when we opened our doors with a couple beers on tap that we had brewed, they sold out that weekend. And so then we essentially had to shut down for 2 weeks to brew more beer on our system. We did that one more time, sold out immediately again, and then went right to a 3.5 barrel brew house. So we went from brewing about 31 gallons at a time to just under 120 gallons at a time. There are brew houses of every size imaginable. I mean, you can technically get licensed as a commercial brewery making 5 gallons of beer at a time. Now, as it relates to economies of scale, you're going to spend the same amount of time brewing 5 gallons of beer as we now spend to brew 1,000 gallons of beer. So the amount you're going to pay people or yourself to brew that amount of beer versus the revenue that is possible need to be considered. So you'll need to consider your market, and I would recommend leaning on the VBOC and your mentor in the industry that we talked about before to talk about what is the right size for you in terms of your brewing capacity, because you don't want to brew more beer than the market will accept. That you don't want to brew more beer than you're able to sell. Also, you don't want to pay on capital equipment loans for machinery that isn't going to be utilized well. So I realize that's kind of a non-answer to how you should go about researching your equipment. But what I would say is determine what you think you can sell, what size equipment you will need to produce that amount of beer regularly, what are the costs and the associated revenues that are that you can potentially get out of that brewing system, and then see if it fits your business plan. And as always, reach out to the BBOC, and I'm one of those individuals who's available to help you figure out if that's the right size and the right move for you. Before starting the brewery, the one thing I wish that I knew or had thought more about was that it is a business. And the day-to-day demands of running a business, from paying bills to dealing with customers, and not all of your customers will be pleasant, to dealing with regulatory officials. All of that is work, and that's fine. However, if you are looking to get into the brewing industry or any industry, just because you love that thing, be prepared that you're going to have to, or potentially going to have to put in a lot of hours that are in addition to doing that thing. As we got into brewing beer, Matt and I loved brewing beer and we loved interacting with customers. What we didn't love was the paying of the bills, filing all the regulatory reports, dealing with distributors who were storing beer in a way that we didn't think was the best for the beer, getting out and talking to accounts who had misconceptions about the beer. And there are a lot of things involved aside from just that portion that you love. Now, some people get around this by hiring people to do those, I would call it unsavory pieces of the business. It's not that they're bad, it's just that they're the business end of doing this thing that you're passionate about doing. And so I wish I had thought more about that, because I no longer homebrew, because the business has essentially turned beer into a job for me, which is great, kind of what I asked for. However, it kind of robbed me of the joy of just experimenting in my kitchen with my best friend. And so I'd recommend that you think through not just doing the idea of doing the thing that you love in the future as a business, but can you also handle doing the business aspects that go along with it? And if you don't want to do that, at least put in your business plan that you're going to hire someone to do those things. It'll save you a bunch of headaches, and it'll keep your friendship far more intact, with a lot fewer heartaches than we've had to go through. So if you're thinking about going into business with your best friend, I have a few pieces of advice. The first is don't do it. I'm just kidding. It's a totally, it's a fantastic addition to a solid friendship, provided that there are expectations and you, as a friend, as friends, you discuss them well in advance. So some of the restrictions I wish we had put on our business relationship as it affected our personal relationship, is setting aside time to just be friends and to not talk about the business, which is easier said than done. When you're starting a business as an entrepreneur, a lot of your life can get rolled into the business that you're starting. And every waking moment, you're thinking about it, you're eat, sleeping, and breathing your business, which you should as an entrepreneur. But when you're doing it with your best friend or a spouse, even, you need to set aside some time to maintain that relationship aside from the business. So when there are stressful times in the business, you need to compartmentalize that and keep that in the business so you can maintain your relationship as well. So I'd recommend being very clear about partitioning time that is for business and time that is for your relationship. In addition, I would be very, very clear, and we didn't have much of this as a problem, but I've seen it. I would be very, very clear and in writing clear about what the work expectations of all the parties are, what the capital contributions are, how much money are you all putting into the business, and if there's you have more money than I, so I'm going to work more than you, put all that stuff down in writing. And it may be a difficult conversation to have in the beginning, but it will certainly save a lot of heartache in the end. And I've seen it in working with a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of people have burned their friendships over a business venture. And while business is amazing and entrepreneurship is terrifically fulfilling, at the end of the day, it's not worth burning our friendships and our marriages over. So be very upfront, put it on paper, and you can even say that we're putting it on paper so we never have to think about it again. So be very upfront about those things. Set aside time that is relationship building time and not business building time, and I think you'd be just fine. So we've been in the brewing game now nearly 13 years, and I think some of the keys to our success are staying true to who we said we wanted to be, who we wanted to be way back then. So when we first wrote the business plan for the brewery, we actually wrote it in Afghanistan at our patrol base in the evenings. We said we wanted to create a business that was a responsible corporate member of our society and who would aid in the rejuvenation of our downtown. So the beautiful city that we live in now, St. Albans, Vermont, at the time was going through a bit of an identity crisis. And this is where we were living and working and raising our children. And so we wanted to do something that was a part of returning St. Albans to the kind of city that we knew it could be. And so we wanted to create a business that drew people to the city so they would realize that, hey, there's a lot of really cool stuff here, while being a business that gave back to its community and gave back to veterans. And so that mission statement went into our first draft of the business plan. And over the last almost 13 years, we've tried to stay as true to that as possible. The majority of our beers go to support a either local or veteran-based philanthropic organization. We donate a lot of money and hold a lot of events to raise awareness for and end veteran suicide. We've been involved in Lake Cleanup, Green Up Day, which is kind of a mini holiday here in Vermont. Purple Hearts Reunited, returning medals of valor to the service men and women who lost them many years ago, or to their families who never knew that their loved one received this award, and a lot of others. I think the other key is investing in your people. So oftentimes when you're looking for employees, you're looking for people with a certain skill set or who've been trained to do certain things. We took a bit of a different approach, and it hasn't always gone perfectly, but what we chose to do is find the people who believe like we believe, who have bigger hearts than ambition, who are willing to work hard and to be honest, and have a drive to serve their communities. And we've given them positions that outstrip their current experience level and challenge them and work to develop them to get to that level. And in that way, our workforce seems to be, anyway, very content in what they do and very fulfilled in what they do. We also try to pay higher than expected wage for this area, because we want the brewery to not just take care of the community, but take care of the people that make the brewery as great as it is. So I think being true to ourselves, investing in people, really has been what's led us to being vibrant today. So in the coming years for 14 Star, we are looking at several different models of expansion. The first being investing in and partnering with veterans around the country to open their own 14 Star branded brew pub, where they can, with our help, build a business that already has a brand. Not dissimilar to franchising, but not a franchise, a wholly owned business that is under the same brand, so they don't have to come up with that and generate it all from scratch. But at this point in my career, I'm looking at options to exit the business from an equity standpoint, not in terms of cashing out, but I'm actually looking to find a way to transfer my equity with as low of a tax burden as possible to my employees, so they can benefit from what they've built in terms of the business and the future upside of the brewery. I will always be involved with helping to guide and care for the brewery, but there comes a time for other people to benefit, and I'd like to focus more on my daughter who's in college and my son who's going to be in high school here shortly. My advice to veterans who are interested in starting a business is simply to do it. Um, there is so much to be learned in the act of doing, and many entrepreneurs never get out of what I like to call the sniffing butt stage. And sorry, if that's too graphic, but a lot of people will think about it and they'll plan and they'll read and they'll think about it and they'll talk about it, but they'll never actually do it. And you can never build a business until you actually do it. And entrepreneurship is iterative. So I own several businesses outside of 14 Star that as we built them, I took the lessons that we learned from each prior business and incorporated them into either the structure, the management, the capital equipment requirements. I took all of those lessons that I wish I had known when I started 14 Star, and I rolled them into my new businesses. And so entrepreneurship is iterative. It's like riding a bike. The first time you do it, it's not going to be great, but the more and more you do it, it starts to become almost second nature. And so when you're talking about business, I currently teach at the University of Vermont. When I'm talking to my students about business, I have to remember sometimes that they haven't gone through this process several times. And so I try to be repetitious in the classroom in that way to give them some of those reps, at least academically. But if you're a veteran and you're considering starting a business, there are a lot of great resources open to you between the VA, the SBA, SBDC, SCORE, and certainly through the SBA, VBOT. I would say just do it. You have the skill. You have, if you successfully made it through your term of service, you have the personal discipline. You have the ability to lead and inspire people. It's there. It's inside of you. So if there are some technical skills that you're missing, those can be learned through studies. Those can be learned through having a mentor. And then it's just the repetition, getting into it and kind of figuring out as you go. So I'd recommend just do it because you will either succeed or you won't. And if you don't, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. I have started several businesses by this time that haven't succeeded. That's okay. I don't care. All it takes is for one to do well, and I have that now. And so now the fear of starting a business is completely gone. So do it. You'll learn a whole lot. It'll work out or it won't. And if it doesn't, you're going to learn a hell of a lot that you can apply to your next venture.